brothers and sisters, we're here again in the studios of Transatlantic Productions.
Put this down here.
No, you can leave it up there.
Okay.
Talk some more, you move it.
Testing, testing.
All right, it's still working. We're here in the studios of Transatlantic Productions, and it gives me great pleasure again to introduce Bobby Hemmitt from Atlanta, Georgia.
Makeup woman.
Today, Bobby is going to be talking with us on the history of the Ku Klux Klan. Bobby, welcome to our studio.
Yes, thank you. Always great to be in the great center of consciousness, New York, where we would say that basically Afrocentric consciousness started, not just in the late 80s, but also going all the way back to the Harlem History Club and all the way back to the 20s, from what I hear, maybe in the early teens. So it's always great to be here. And also at Transatlantic Productions to take my place in the library or the archives of so many thousands of Africans, or ancient gods, if you want to put it, that's been recorded throughout the years here at Transatlantic Production, with the guru of film and audio and all, Minister Clemson Brown, the Minister of Information.
I like that name. I think I will adopt that, the Minister of Information.
That's right.
Okay, so Bobby, what are you going to talk with us today?
Well, basically, I'm going to go into the history of the Klan, but in order to put that in context, we have to give you the history of modern-day secret societies altogether.
Now, are you saying that the Klan is a secret society?
It's a very advanced secret society. That's the reason why we can't draw the parallel, because we always have these rednecks etched in our mind. And as a result, we don't understand that the secret society has its origins in the Moorish system. As a matter of fact, the actual outfits that the Klan wear, I'm not talking about the one where you see somebody cut some holes in some sheets, but I'm talking about the real Grand Master outfits, and the ones that's really done up, but you know, with the actual cross and the robe with the cape and the pine cone hat. That's all Egyptian initiation outfits brought up into Europe by the Moors. And so in order to give you a history of that and a history of what the Klan is, as well as a history of basically how they operate now, we have to give you the general history of modern day Masonic organizations, you know, which is separated from the Kamite thing, which is the origin of Masonic, or origin of secret societies. But what we call modern day Masonic organization gets its start in Moorish Spain, and Moorish occupation of Europe period out of the 16 universities that were set up by the Moors. So we need to go into all of that also today, as well as a prehistory or a little bit of history on some other aspects of the Moors and how this whole thing came about as far as how it started. So we need to go into some of that too. So I'm ready when you are.
Let's roll, Bobby.
Okay. In order to do this, we need to understand a little more about the Moors and the concept and basically what was the divine plan. The Moors are nothing but a consortium of Kamite Egyptians. For the people that don't know what Kamite mean, or Kemet, or Kamites are Egyptian priesthood, mainly the temple of Kom-Ombo in Egypt, or Kemet, the temple of Isis, or Aset, the last temple of Isis, which was one of the last temples to be closed at Philae, as well as other Sufi orders in Arabia that have their origin in what is called Kushite Arabia, in which Muhammad's father was a Kushite Arab. You see. And basically the Arab religion became basically a moralistic, lesser repertoire of greater mysteries that the ancient Kushite Arabians had. And when I say Kushite, we're talking about the people who originally inhabited that Arabian land, your Ethiopians, which can be traced all the way up into East India as the Dravidians. So we're talking about the Kushite Arabians and the whole Sufi order. As a matter of fact, the word Suf is something that describes a people. It's not the actual name of the people. It is basically, it means woolly-haired one, a woolly-haired one. So who were they talking about? They were talking about the Moors. They come from different names like Alcamoria, Camamoria, Lamoria, Mu, Moor, Mari, and we have the origins of these Moors long before we get even Islam. The Greeks talk about the Moors. The Christians talk about the Moors, the Moabites, the Moors. We have the name Moor that is way longer. Even Jeremiah in Book of the Beginnings has the origin of Kemetic origins of Mari in Book of the Beginnings, Volume 2. And in there he shows Mari is all a form of Moor. The word morals comes from the word Moor. You see, the word morals come from the word Morgan comes from the word Moor. Might I add, Morgan Freeman played the Moor in the movie Robin Hood in 1991. All of this particular stuff has its origins, but it's long before the Islamic aspect. Now let me explain what went on here. The Egyptians or the Camites knew prophecy all the way up to date. They understood when the Camite empire started shutting down that they would need a newer religion to couch the mysteries under. So Islam being the newer religion and being one that had with the Islamic laws that was set up for an Arab, which was a savage people at the time, you know, these Islamic laws civilized them. They knew that they were going to have to take that same type of political system into Europe to civilize the European. And Christianity, although it has its effect on Europe, they would need something a lot more powerful as far as Islam and the submission to Allah. So it would be more of a political system when you talk about the Islamic thing, more than it would be the religious doctrine of the Moors. So in so many words, it's no different than a people of different organizations going into Democratic or Republican Party. And we fail to realize that you can take a religion as a political system and couch what you want in it. And the religion would just be the banner in which you would bring all of these ancient disciplines from the ancient world into that religion. It's about like the Santeria. Santeria is basically the Yoruba religion woven into the Catholicism. So those people could remain keeping those African practices in the Caribbean and in South America. You understand where I'm coming from? So it's the same thing with the Islam. Moorish history did not start with Islam. It was just, the Islam only became a tool of civilization for a certain amount of people. You see? These priests that went up under the banner of Islam is a consortium of Egyptian priests, or Camite priests, as well as the ancient mystery systems from Arabia, Zoroastrianism, which would be from ancient Persia. You see, newfound Gnostic movements, because Gnosticism is basically this. Gnosticism is esoteric Christianity, but it's called pre-Christianity. Now, what is this? To get a synopsis on what I'm talking about is a couple of 100 years, maybe 100 years before the last temple of Isis or Aset was closed by Justinian. The Egyptian priests spent that last 100 years translating Egyptian mystery texts from hieroglyphics into Coptic religion, or into the Coptic language, and Coptic means later day Egyptian. And they translated it into Coptic. They used several functioning languages around the Mediterranean at that time, as well as Africa, to basically transfer the Camite or the hieroglyphics or the metaneta in Hieratic and Demotic into these particular other scripts, like Arabic, Greek, Latin, even Hebrew, Aramaic, but mainly a wide body of Coptic. These particular doctrines was found in 1945 when they dug them up in 1945, called the Nag Hammadi Library. And these are supposed to be the original teachings of Jesus.
Where were they dug up at?
They were dug up in a place called Nag Hammadi, Kemet, Egypt.
And they were found in Egypt.
In Egypt. The original teachings of Jesus are the Christ, found in Kemet in 1945. The Catholic Church denounced them as heresy. And this movement is out now, Stigmata, is dealing with the suppression of these ancient scripts by the Catholic Church. And this was a page, Demon Seed, Hollywood and the Catholic Church at War. Dealing with these ancient texts. You can find these ancient texts in Barnes and Nobles and Borders, in a book called the Nag Hammadi Library by James, edited by James Robinson. Also, you can find those particular texts broken down in a book called the Gnostic Scriptures by Bentley Layton. Now, a funny thing happened, because these texts was dug up in 1945, they weren't translated into English into 1977. When they were first dug up, clearly in the book, Jean Duress, which is a papyrologist from France, translated some of the first texts. Him and a guy by the name of Hans Jonas wrote a book, Gnostic Religions, in the 1950s. So we have a book called Hans Jonas's book, The Gnostic Religion, The Beginning of Christianity and the Alien God, in 1950s. And we have Jean Duress wrote a book called The Secret Books of the Egyptian Gnostics in 1950. And clearly in his Secret Books of the Egyptian Gnostics, we got names like Horus, Set, Abraxas, Mithra, and all these different names for the Christ. But by the time these particular texts was translated into English by 1977, we have the word Jesus substituted for the other names of these Christ figures. You see what I'm saying?
Now, are you saying that Christianity comes out of an Egyptian worldview, an Egyptian science?
Exactly. But what I found, that Christianity is not just an Egyptian science. Christianity is a consortium of different other aspects. Hebrew, Greek, Coptic, you see what I'm saying? Coptic, Camite. It's a mixing pot of all these different disciplines. Let me give you an example and give you a short bit of history before we go into this on what actually happened.
All right, thank you.
Basically, what happened was, you got your Hebrews in Rome at the time, raising hell, these black people. At that particular time, your religion was no different than the Democratic or Republican Party. If you didn't have a spiritual system in order to get the people to believe your political idea, the people wouldn't follow. Because the politics was always woven into the actual spiritual aspect of that day. The only way you get the people to follow your laws, you better show them some aspect of it on the spiritual realm to make your law seem just. Well, the Romans at that time had our ancient mysteries, the Romulus and Remus and other mysteries of Jupiter, but they had forgotten the Romans were so busy killing people around the whole world. The Mediterranean, Africa, owning up into Europe. They became experts at one thing, killing people. Meanwhile, their mythology that they started out from, which was invented by black people, that's what we need to understand. Your Greek mythology and your Roman mythology was invented by black people. Then later on, the Indo-Europeans came in and basically converted to it. But the Indo-Europeans that consisted of Rome in the time of all of the major killings of the great Roman Empire, these particular people had basically neglected the actual mythological phase of the religion until the religion suffered. So meanwhile, they have a deteriorated form of spiritual awareness and knowledge. Meanwhile, you got your Hebrews over here cutting up, and they have basically a newly found united religion under the banner of the Torah or whatever. And the Roman citizens say, hey, we need to, we like what they doing. We need to follow them. So therefore, the Roman government said, well, we got a problem here. We got to get something what these people got. These people willing to die for God or whatever. So they said, well, listen, it's interesting because we conquered both Greece and Egypt. And the Greeks plagiarized all of the Egyptian texts. And now we have conquered them, and we got all these texts in which even Hebrew is made up of. We got access to them. So they hired a bunch of scholars, Paul and all of them, to come in and basically put these texts together. And the problem in which most Christians and most people in the world cannot break is these religious doctrines, which is the fundamental basis of Christianity, always existed. It's just that they did one thing to mess everything up. For the first time, well, they copied the Hebrews. The Hebrews were the first to do it. They historicalized sublime mythology. There's a text. Sublime mythology makes grotesque history. So, let me give you an example. They will take, let's just say, for the sake of argument, there was a historical revolutionary freedom fighter of that area. And he had a history of going up against the Roman government. Whenever he gets executed, that's the first thing to make a person immortal, is to kill him. Let's just say, but whenever he gets executed, or whenever they decide that they want to make this particular person into a mythical figure, remember Jeremiah says, historical Jesus, mythical Christ. So basically what they would do is take the age-old teachings of the mystical Christ, which goes all the way back 10,000 years in Kemet, you see what I'm saying? And maybe 100,000 years beyond that. There is no record of this same story that is in all different cultures. And we take the teachings of this mystical Christ and we weave it into the historical story of the actual person. Then basically we will make that particular story exclusive to this one person, and basically the Roman government tried to get the monopoly on the Christ story, which every culture had. So the mystical spiritual teachings of Christ had nothing to do with the revolutionary freedom fighter. So let me give you an example. Let's say 100 years from down the road I get shot in the head. Let's just say I'm a revolutionary freedom fighter 100 years from now. And somebody killed me. And they say, well, we want to make this person immortal. So what we'll do is we'll go take the teachings of Malcolm X, which is a total different system, and we'll say that Bobby Hemmitt did it. You see what I'm saying? And 100 years down the road, some people could be worshiping me, Bobby Hemmitt, as a person that broke off from the Nation of Islam, who went to Mecca, and the whole 9 yards, a person that was in jail, and all this. So basically, the historical person, if there was a historical person, life is different than the mystical teachings of a person born from immaculate conception. That is Horus. That is Heracles. That is Apollo. That is Perseus. That is Dionysus. You see what I'm saying? That is Osiris. That is Obatala. You see, that is Obatala. That is Jason. That is all the historical figures of the divine hero around that all cultures had that same story. But they took that story, and for the first time that story became a historical person. And that means that they tried to get the monopoly on the Christ thing by throwing a historical person up in there and saying, there's this historical person that did these same things, in which we can find the same things in every culture. You see.
But you're saying that the origin of that is where? Of the origin of this divine creator, the story in which Jesus,
it has its roots in dynastic Kemet, and beyond dynastic Kemet into what is called pre-dynastic Kemet, or Egypt, which is called Typhonian, or Draconian, or Ophidian. These are names of the worship of pre-dynastic Egypt. That there was tons of this particular information around until 1907. Gerald Massey went into the British Museum and copied tons of this Typhonian material and wrote 6 volumes. Ancient Egypt Light of the World, which is the last volume, 1907. Natural Genesis, 1888. And the first volume, Book of the Beginnings, 1881. So Book of the Beginnings, 1881, Natural Genesis, 1888, and Ancient Egypt Light of the World, 1907. After 1907, the government came in and locked down the secret societies in Europe and America. Locked down all of the pre-dynastic texts. Then they went to, those were the texts. Then they went over to Kemet and went down to Abu Simbel, and they had 200 Typhonian temples. And they built the Aswan Dam and flooded over 200 Typhonian temples, which is the pre-dynastic origin of this stuff, to cover up this. Because they found Hebrew writings in the text, in those temples, and they found a lot of things that's contrary to history. So, you know the white man don't cover up nothing. But why is it that he covered up 200 temples, that, like Dr. Venn mentions, under the doggone Aswan River?
So you're saying, but the Russians built the Aswan Dam.
Didn't matter who built the dam. If we talking about all one secret society, whether it's the Russians, the Swedes, or whatever, that's just the contract. They ain't gonna build nothing if Britain or the Illuminati or these particular secret societies say no. We're talking about people that's ready to go to war.
Now, are you saying that this was a planned conspiracy?
It's a conspiracy.
The dam is built where it is built in order to wipe out a history of
history of people, because it's one thing, they somehow had built a cohesive system that can somehow fool people into thinking that Egyptians was white. But there was no way they could do it down in Nubia, where the same text is up in doggone Cairo and all this is in Nubia, and it's all black.
And it predates.
That
is.
Yes, exactly. Predates it. And so they had to cover up 200 temples. You see what I'm saying? And this is one of the reasons. But this Christ origin has its origin, we will say, well, let's put it this way. Let's give what Manetho said, which gave a very brief history of Kemet. He said we got, 300 pharaohs in the dynastic period. No, 500 in the dynastic period, which is 3,000 years. 800 in the pre-dynastic. He gave all these things. He said roughly we're talking about 10,000 years of history. They said, well, who used to rule before then? He said that used to be a whole bunch of gods used to rule.
Now wait a minute. Manetho said that. Where can you find that?
You have a book upstairs, Basil Davison's book. I saw it when I was sleeping in your room the last time. It's a little light blue book Basil Davison did in '91. It's recorded in that book. I think it's called Africa. It's got Africa on it. And it has that particular part of Manetho says it. It's in the Basil Davison's book.
And he says that there was 800.
Roughly, the number was roughly, he said it was, let's see how this goes, 500 pharaohs in the dynastic, which represents 3,000 years. 800 in the pre-dynastic, which roughly estimates about 5,000 years. He said, well, that's about 8,000 years. He said, roughly, we're talking about 10,000 years of history, of physical history. He said, well, who used to rule before then? He said, that's when a whole bunch of gods used to rule. Now, most people couldn't understand that because most of your African people in the Afrocentric community were historians and they're not metaphysicians. But when you understand what happened, there's a good book, Rudolf Steiner's book, Universe, Earth, and Man, which explains the migration from us coming from a spiritual level to a physical level. Also in his book, Cosmic Memory, Rudolf Steiner being a great cult scholar who basically was one of the people that benefited on a lot of this stuff that the Moors left behind that we're going to get into in a few minutes. And so basically, in so many words, in our original origin, we were not necessarily a physical people. The spiritual world was visible because we were semi-spiritual. That's where you get your Atlantis, Lemuria, Alchemoria, and all of that stuff from. The vibratory rate, which is everything vibrates, that's in the first laws of hermetics in a book called by the three initiates, the Kabbalion. Not the Kabbalah, the Kabbalion by the three initiates, which is these same hermetic laws we'll get into in a few minutes. And everything vibrates, even this pencil vibrates.
Correct.
This pen. It just basically, when you slow down the vibratory rate, it becomes solid. It's like ice going to steam, evaporating. We used to be in a spiritual world, and the physical world was like a shadow. As the vibratory rate slowed down, we fell more into a physical world, and the spiritual world became a shadow and later on disappeared. But in that pre-physical time, that's when we were gods. Is it not written in your law that ye are gods? John chapter 10, verse 34, 36. And that characteristics is the origin of the Christ. So we're talking about something that goes back thousands of years. At least 10,000 years of physical history. And hundreds of thousands of years in the spiritual history. You see. Of the spiritual history. So this text predates Christianity. Hundreds of thousands of years, if not millions. You see what I'm saying? But the thing that Christianity did to get the monopoly on this was they historicalized the ancient text. And before that, it was a title that basically your soul is the Christ. That's what the Christ is. It is a process of your soul going from one level to its illuminated level. And you went to school in Kemet to learn how to become the Christ.
All right.
You got the word Christos. Now how is it that the Christians, if you ask any Christian, give me the origins of Christ, he will go, well, Christ is Greek, which means Christos. Now hold on, that's already a contradiction because I thought the Greeks was pagans. Well, if the damn Greeks is pagans, what the hell they doing with Christ? That's a contradiction. You call these people pagans, you call the Egyptians pagans. Well, why the hell why can't you give me the Hebrew origin of it? You got to give me the Greek. No, the Greeks were pagans now. You can't damn have one thing, tell one lie, and try to get up out of it. Then you have Christ in Egypt. Christ. Anointing. Anointed with what? Olive oil. Olives are black and green. The carbon in both is what makes them black or even green. And basically that's talking about the origins of melanin. The word Christ has its origins in a discipline out of Kemet or Egypt called alchemy, which is the study of melanin. And the crystallization of melanin going to its highest form is that's what you call the Christ. No melanin, no Christ. In Blavatsky's two versions of the secret doctrines, there's a thing, no shadow, no God. The shadow in Jung psychology is talking about dark substance, the shadow. Melanin has several names, the negrito, the prima materia, the sol, nigger, or niger. You see, or the nigra, nigrum, nigrus. These are Latin terms for this black substance. which is the anointing oil, carbon, 6 protons, 6 electrons, 6 neutrons, which is the key to the Bible, which is the Christos, the Christ. The Christ is the beast. Where is the beast? The beast is the Sphinx that sits in the middle of the earth. Paramarket, Horus on the horizon. Horus is the Greek Heru, which means great face. Face of God. Well, in Genesis, Jacob wrestled with the angel all night. At daybreak, he saw the face of God, and it was called what? Pineal gland. The pineal gland brings the Christ, light of the world. It is the light bringer, Lucifer. Lucifer is the Christ. That's why in the Conference of Nicaea, as Alvin Boyd Kuhn, the great Massey scholar of the 1940s, said, they had to take the amount of times that the word Lucifer appeared in the Bible and get rid of it down to one time, because you would draw the parallel. That Lucifer and Christ is the same. Whereas in Genesis they said Lucifer fell like the morning star. But by the time you get to Revelations, Christ said, I am the morning star. You see? Then you get an aspect of what they're talking about is two polarities of the same soul. And mainly, they had to split this into good and evil so they can get the control over people, mainly in the Roman era. You see? One is a political thing, and one is the quintessential aspect. You can't have light now unless you have dark. We'll get back into that in the esoteric portion of this particular program. Now, going back to recap this, what happened is all of this great information during the time of the temple of Isis of Philae, when there was the last temple closed, they took all of this information, translated it into Arabic, translated it into Coptic, even into Greek, Latin. Then those particular priests migrated out of Kemet, hooked up with a brotherhood from Arabia, under the banner of Islam and Morocco, and these mystery systems went on up into Europe. Now, why was that? Well, number one, they understood prophecy. Now, we will prove this in the prophetic aspect of the program, that they understood that the European was inevitable. The European would come into power. Now, the reason why we know that, because we have 5,000-year-old papyruses that deal with this, called the Hermetic text. And the reason why it got past the whole Afrocentric movement is because the Hermetic text was translated into Greek and into Latin. So therefore, we just avoided it. You see what I'm saying? We just avoided it. But we have tons of this particular information. And I was talking to Dr. Charles Finch. He was saying, you're right, we need to go back and regain all of the Greek stuff, because we also know that the Greeks, the original Greeks and the original Romans were the Etruscans, which were a Phoenician group that came out of Babylonia, Mesopotamia, and have their origins in pre-dynastic Egypt.
Are you saying that Mesopotamia predated in terms of its contributions to civilization Egypt?
No. See, there's migrations that happen. Let me explain. You have your dynastic, pre-dynastic Kemet. Then you have this particular skirmish, if there was one, that brought on dynastic Kemet with Menes. They suppressed the pre-dynastic Egyptians. The pre-dynastic Egyptians, meanwhile, was there so long they was able to migrate. So they migrated on into Samaria, Mesopotamia, and became the Tyranians, Eturians, Etruscans, Phoenicians, the Carthaginians, the Berbers, and all of those ancient black people of the Mediterranean. They got their origin in pre-dynastic Egypt.
Now, why did they migrate?
Well, number one, they had been there so long until they migrated, for the simple fact that they had been there for thousands of years. Another migration is that you had the younger Egyptians, which is your dynastic period, taking the land And so you had other ones that migrated based on that. Even if you're talking about it, we ain't talking about nothing but one damn family that had their origins at the beginning of the Nile, Kilimanjaro. You see what I'm saying? So we're not necessarily talking about necessarily what predated the other ones. We understand that we got the Egyptian script that they found in November. Last November or December, they found an Egyptian script that predates the Sumerian thing. Because, you know, the white boy was trying to deal with the Sumerian being older.
It's in Mesopotamia.
Mesopotamia. And they was doing that all because these white Jews wanted to fake themselves, which we know that they get their origin in Spain. You see what I'm saying? They get their origin in Spain. You know what I'm saying? These particular, these white Jews get their origin in Spain. You see, so, but they can somehow fake it with the Mesopotamian thing because the key is to get everything off the continent of Africa. Because as long as you put it on Africa, there's some discrepancy on what color these people were. You see what I'm saying? So everything is to try to get it off the continent of Africa. We could somewhat put it in Babylonia, Mesopotamia, or whatever. Then somehow we can fake this shit being white. You see what I'm saying? If Egypt wasn't in Africa, it would be over. Everything would be Kemet. They would bear witness to everything being the origin of Kemet because they could front that, well, that's not an African civilization because it's not on the continent.
Right.
You see, so that's the whole reason by that. But when we talk about all of it, Mesopotamia, Greece, Rome, India, and even Europe, we're talking about Africa. Because at one time, the land was one landmass.
Correct.
And it was one people. That's just the bottom line. We are the people. You see. So, this Moorish thing is a consortium of different systems, and these people traveled up into Europe. But they understood based on the text that the white boy would come into power. Now, what you gonna do? If they understand that we're gonna go into this hibernation period, and they understand that there's gonna be this land that's gonna be established at the ends of the earth. We'll get into that when we go into another part. They understood we damn well better make the white boy semi-barbaric as opposed to barbaric. We will give him a form of civilized barbarism than just barbaric. So can you imagine us coming out of slavery with this mug being a damn caveman damn near or a Viking? We would never get any knowledge. So the best thing to do is to put him in a position that we can benefit from, or that we gonna catch hell to benefit from it. At least when we get some of the damn gravy, it damn sure be some of the gravy that we can relate to the past. You understand what I'm saying? Now, mind you, me, we're talking about a people that's looking at the whole picture.
Thousands of years ahead.
Ahead. You see. So these Moors, these particular Moors, go ahead.
You said that they saw through prophecy that they would go into a sleep. But
exactly.
Why were they going? Why was that?
It's a good question. That's a good question. That's a good question. I'm gonna give you two aspects of it. One is the divine aspect of nature and how everything goes to a degenerative process to regenerate into a new form of life.
Okay.
The phoenix rises from the ashes. The Christ rises from the grave. You see. And mind you, the Christ and the phoenix is the same story. You see what I'm saying? This is supposed to be the land of the phoenix. Because you have the Native Americans worship the phoenix also as a bald eagle. And you see that white head represents the halo, or the halo of light. You see. So, first of all, let's get this straight right now. First of all, we didn't fall from shit. We didn't fall from nothing. years. And you need to go to the next metamorphosis, the next paradigm. In order to go to the next paradigm, you got to give this up. Let's say you've been drinking Kool-Aid for years in a doggone chalice. And you want some doggone wine, some Cristal, or whatever these rappers call it, the most elite, Moet. It was Moet, Cristal. Or you want some 5,000-year-old wine, that's the most elite stuff. You got to pour that Kool-Aid out. Your cup is running over. So in order to get to the next spiritual paradigm shift of a new existence, as you call the New Jerusalem in the Bible, you have to give up the previous civilization and all forms of civilization so you can be an empty vessel to receive the new illumination, or in Christianity, the kingdom of the Lord. You see what I'm saying? You have to give up that particular aspect. So we're talking about, we're spiritual people. Ultimately, civilization means nothing if we're not talking about a spiritual aspect. That's just the way we are. Now let me give you an example before I go back into that. I'll give you a good example. Now, based on the text, if we knew we was going to go into a funk, or a hibernation, or we're going to go into slavery, and we had 5,000 years to prepare for it, why is it when we go and look into our ancient civilization, we don't find no economical system, no political system written down that we can benefit from? We don't find nothing prepared for us. Only thing we find prepared for us is a whole bunch of spiritual stuff. You see what I'm saying? And a whole bunch of history on what we have done. Most of the stuff we find is a whole bunch of spiritual stuff. But since then we got hit in the head, and we want what the white man got. And he don't have nothing but the leftover ruins of what we left him. Nothing. You got to understand the concept of a people. Just like Dr. Ben said, we didn't fall, we deteriorated. Degenerated. You got to understand a people that basically don't even have a record of the origins of how old we are. None. Basically, when Elijah Muhammad says 66 trillion years, that's what they're talking about.
But you're saying that there is no record of their economic system, their political system.
No, I'm not saying wasn't a record of those things we had back then. I'm saying if we have 5,000 years to prepare for the time that we come up out of the sleep, which is now, why you can't find an economical system
for today?
If you got 5,000 years to prepare for something, seems to me you can prepare an economical, political, social system that your people can get when they come up out of the sleep.
Okay.
Plaster it throughout the walls. Why is it that the only thing we find is spiritual material? Because the key, a caterpillar don't go into a cocoon to come out a caterpillar. A baby don't go to kindergarten through 12th grade to come back out an infant wearing diapers. You see what I'm saying? Well, we're talking about a process of spirituality. Your whole Egyptian mummified thing with Osiris being the mummy and a mentor is the cocoon stage. You see? So we didn't come back to raise the civilization back to what we had it. We came to metamorphosize on a new plane of existence. But meanwhile, we done got hit in the head with the white boy. And he ain't doing nothing but trying to imitate us. And down the road, studying all our information, he's understanding he can never go where we're supposed to be going. And yet we following him. And yet we've done this for thousands of years. Even if you look at the average white they said that the average white system, let's just say white Rome and white Greece, when they became white, they only lasted about, a good 200 years, 300 years? Maybe 200 years, and then the rest of it was a decline. America was 200 years old in 1976, and now we talk about a decline. But yet we were in Kemet conservatively for 3,000 years in the dynastic period, but when we just talk about the whole period, 10,000 years. Now let me give you another scenario. We raised a civilization for millions of years to the height. Then we started deteriorating because we was going to another level. And in order to go to that other level, you have to degenerate. You have to have what is called an involution, other than an evolution. If you ever notice how the rest of Africa, I often thought this in the Afrocentric movement, I know this crossed your mind. You see all these magnificent monuments in one corner of Africa, mainly Kemet. And you ever thought about it, said, damn, why the rest of the Africans didn't build those monuments that way?
Yes.
All over. Although you might find a little bit of places in, a little bit of stuff throughout Africa. But you don't find the same stuff you have in Kemet.
Correct. And
I often wondered about this until I got into the esoteric thing and tried to understand. The Egyptians was not building no civilization for the sake of just building monuments. The Kemites were the Africans that decided that they needed to build a civilization of record keeping. That they could teach the rest of the world the records of knowledge. So the rest of the world could be set up on a knowledge base when they go into a hibernation period. Now you say, well, why did the other Africans didn't do this? Because the other Africans, all of the knowledge that you see in Kemet, we had in our head. They were called detailed files. You ever see the Terminator? He said, I have detailed files. You see that computer that the white man got, that internet? Can you imagine the average citizen of Africa having this in their head, and the only thing you got to do is tap into detailed files? You get a remnant of it when you see the actual griot sitting on a rock and giving you 5,000 years of history off the top of his head. And that is a degenerated part. Can you imagine that the melanin records, the records of melanin as a cosmic computer, that you can tap into all forms of knowledge in your head? You can go to all different dimensions in your head. You can go to damn Japan, and you can go to damn Mississippi in your head, moving, traveling through time and space without moving. It's in the movie Doom.
And you're saying the Africans could do
They could do that.
Now, then if that's the case, why can't they do it now?
Okay, I'll explain. They could do that for millions of years. Then there was a degeneration period where that particular stuff, they started losing memory. Then there was a race for time. So they hightailed it over to Kemet. And they built all these records of what was in their head. I want to ask you a goddamn question. Use the expression. Where the hell did it come from? Think about it. Before the first hieroglyphics was on the temple, did they have other records to put on there? You got to understand. There got to be some type of origin of where these records came from. How is it these people can have enough knowledge and hieroglyphics and metaneta, hieratic, demonic, and papyrus that can wrap around the moon 3 times? Where did it come from? Before they had writing. It had to come from somewhere. Where did it come from? It came from out of them.
Correct.
Genetic memory bank. Which is the melanin. They took 10,000 years to record all of the knowledge that they had in the universe, which was inside of them. The kingdom is within.
around saying that the monuments of Egypt are no more than written records.
That's all it was. That's all it was. I mean, they're nice buildings and stuff, but ultimately, you see, we're looking at white man architecture. See, we always take a modern mind and try to look into the past. Instead of trying to understand the concept of what the past was doing. The modern man builds buildings just for beauty. You see what I'm saying? The Egyptians or the Africans, they built those buildings as records and monuments, and as a result, we benefit from them now. It's just like Dr. Ben said, you can talk all that shit you want about Christianity, but I'll take your ass to Egypt and put it right in your face. You see what I'm saying? Now, first of all, let me say something before I go on. For those people out in TV land, yes, I am cursing, but guess what? There's only one curse word. See, this is a series of programming. You got to free your mind. There's only one curse word, and that's damn. And isn't it funny that the curse word that you say damn is the least one that people least get offended by? You can say damn on TV. Hell, a preacher can say damn in the church. And that's the one that people least get offended by. The other ones are just British slang or European slang. But because somebody's programmed you to react to something from you, because from a child, you think I'm cursing. So even when we talk about this, we're getting through years and years of programming. You see what I'm saying? And even when you use the word damn, it has to be a certain way you have to damn a person. So there's no such thing as curse words. As I also make the other thing, even you Christians out there, if you say I'm cursing, well, how is it that the English language wasn't even around when most of the scriptures was written? And how is it that something didn't exist before the scriptures were written can be a curse word now? You see what I'm saying? Now, let's get back to what I'm saying. These monuments we built were nothing but libraries of records that we used to have in our mind. You remember I told you that Nephilim said it was a whole bunch of gods used to rule? That wasn't nothing when we had detailed files. Is it not written in the law that ye are gods? John chapter 10, verse 34, 36.
Correct.
Our God standeth on the congregation of the mighty, and he judges among the gods. Just as I have done great works, greater works, ye shall do. The process of melanin and alchemy, once it is completed to the highest Christ form, is called the great works. And man will be judged by his works. It means whether you have a soul to be worked that can work or not. In the Gospel of Thomas, it says that the seed that my Father did not plant cannot be plucked up. Which means you got to have a soul to even be resurrected. You see what I'm saying? The Gospel of Thomas, might I add, is one of them texts that was found in 1945 that the Catholic Church is trying to suppress or saying is heresy. Now, they recorded these detailed files that was in their heads because they understood that no matter how high they were, there was another level that they had to get to, which would be God of the existing, known, and unknown universe. And that's what we're going back to. But in order to get to that stage, we had to complete the system or the stage of being human. So in the context of our humanity starting to slip, we used the monuments as a race of time before we lost all that information in our detailed files and became regular humans.
Bobby, I gotta ask you something.
Yeah.
We gotta put the white man then into context now.
Yeah.
Because before then there is no white man.
Right.
How old is the white man, and really what is he, and how does he fit into this process right now that we are talking about?
Okay. Let me give you some.
Degenerate process.
Well, let me give you.
What role does he play for us?
Let me give you 2 or 3 concepts of what this thing is. Dealing with new information coming from those Nag Hammadi texts coming out of Egypt in 1945. First of all, hands down, we have more information on him being created than we do this evolution thing. That's the first thing. My point is number one, this is a book coming out of This is a book that you can get in most comic book stores,
Mm-hmm.
called the Nephilim. And this particular book explains how, and I'll read some to you, on how Charles Darwin was a part of a secret society who made up this whole thing on this we coming from apes, just so to put the white boy up in there and conceal that we are the origins of everything.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, the Nephilim you will find is in the Bible. In Genesis, they talk about the Nephilim, these giants.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, even the Greeks, Herodotus and them called us giants, the Ethiopians giants.
Mm-hmm.
You see, the Greeks talked about the Africans being giants.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You see.
They sure did.
Yeah. So the Nephilim is nothing that you see in the Bible. We are the Nephilim. Now this book says, ages past, you lived many times. Your slaves built the pyramids to honor your death. You died for your sins of Jerusalem. You lost your head suggesting they eat cake. You are the Nephilim, a demigod, a prophet, a saint, a magician from the mystic past. I'm talking about black people.
Mm-hmm.
Again, you incarnate to continue your ancient struggle for enlightenment against those plots of the occult societies, which is the white boys, who seek to enslave you and steal your magic. Your magic is your knowledge, and your magic is melanin.
Uh-huh.
You see? Now, in here, the book says this. Among the first great secrets of the Nephilim are black people. Because they say, well, who are the Nephilim? They say, well, you can find the Nephilim today.
Mm-hmm.
They say you'll find them in the jail houses. That's black people.
Mm-hmm.
They say, number one, they're in the jailhouse because subconsciously they can't adhere to the white man laws because they have been around on the planet so long.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Until they have seen laws change so much until they realize that the white boys' stuff really ain't the law.
Mm-hmm.
So subconsciously they rebel against that because they know that they are greater than that.
Mm-hmm.
Although they might not know they're doing it. Mm-hmm. So it says, among the first secrets that the Nephilim learns is that history is conceived by the majority of humans is incorrect. Well, we know that based on the Afrocentric movement.
Mm-hmm.
You see?
Mm-hmm.
Most, perhaps all of historical events have their origin in the mystical world of the Nephilim, i.e. black Africans. Human history and books only describe the surface of things as lived by individual groups who are unable to comprehend the true implications or simply refuse to face the truth. That's white people. Mm-hmm. Furthermore, secret societies have fabricated false historical scientific truths to protect their influences and activities. Mm-hmm. These deceptions have been accepted as truth by the majority of society. Now this is in a comic book. Now why is this in a comic book? Because the white boy studies us. He understands us, and not only just black people, the average white person. Because they got to keep the average white person stupid to rule over us.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Yes.
You see, the average white person don't know. You go to the average white person, and he just as stupid.
Mm-hmm.
But they are those of the white race that knows. So he'll put it in a comic book because he'll understand that I'm Mr. Professor at Harvard, I'm Mr. Professor at Cornell. And when I'm talking about my history, if the truth of my history is in a comic book, well, I'm Mr. Professor at Cornell, I can't talk about that. You see, that's how they put it to your behind. You see where I'm coming from? They put it in a comic book. They know that the professors and the so-called people of academia can't go there. You see? So therefore, put it in a comic book, and that nigga better not get on my damn podium and we ask him where he got this shit from, and he say a comic book. So this is the way to tell the truth. White boy always got some tricks for you. That's why don't never be a part of the institutions. And you can say what the hell you want. We are reality and we are truth. And fuck the white man's standards on how things are supposed to be done.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Love it. Love it.
So, a blatant example is that of Darwin's theory, the natural selection. Incurably curious, Darwin discovered Atlantean or African documents.
Do they say African?
They say Atlantean.
Oh, you saying African?
African. I'm recorrecting it.
Mm-hmm.
Documents which hinted at the origin of human development. You see, Dr. Ben just said, well, we need to pay attention to Atlantis. He said because the only thing that the Greeks got was from one of the Egyptian sages that it mentioned Atlantis. Mm-hmm. He didn't say that there wasn't an Atlantis. He just said that we don't have enough information on it.
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He
never said that it didn't exist, because the Egyptian sage said it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He just said that we don't have enough information on it. Well, they don't have enough information on it because they were historians, and history is always conservative based on the framework on which we present history is based on European collegiate structure. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But there's alternative history in fields of the esoteric world, which if you are in the collegiate factor, you can't mention. Mm-hmm. Because that'll be scholarly suicide based on the white man. Mm-hmm. So Darwin discovered African or Atlantean documents. Now, why did he discover this? Because he was a part of a secret society. When we get in there, you're going to find out some stuff when we go into this. Which hinted at the origins. All right, let me start again at the top part about Darwin. A blatant example of this theory of natural selections is Darwin's theory of natural selection. Incurably curious, Darwin discovered the African or Atlantean documents which hinted the origins of human development. During his numerous travels, he was eventually initiated into a Masonic lodge aimed at bringing the humans and the Nephilims together. Well, that might have been the aspect. When they talk about humans, they're talking about white people now. And the Nephilims, we are a higher breed of that. We'll go back, we're going to get to the white boy in a minute. When he learned the origins of humanity and destiny of the Nephilim, because we have a destiny, Darwin destroyed the observations which had brought him to enlightenment, afraid of betraying the Nephilim lodge in their hostile secret societies. He guided them, who guided him. Darwin built his coherent system of biological evolution and further obscure the track. Basically, he made this particular trick. And provided with the weapon which could be used to attack the Masons, sworn enemy of the Catholic Church. Thus Darwin protected those whom he called the miracle selection of the Nephilim. So in so many words, what he's talking about here is, he created this whole thing of coming from apes. To cover up the fact that, number one, we didn't come from no damn apes. Now, see, we got this same foolishness filtered down in the Afrocentric community, because half of the Afrocentric scholars, by them being in a part of a collegiate structure, and now this is the foundation of all colleges, is you got to believe in this Darwin's theory to be considered a scholar. So the Afrocentric movement was talking about all these different ape-type people up to black people. We don't have no records. And I'll debate any black person that'll come up to me and show me some shit in Africa and in Kemet where we came from apes. See, this is the problem I get. Oh, all of a sudden we stupid. When we wrote our history 2,000-3,000 years ago, we couldn't tell, or we didn't have enough damn sense to know where the hell we came from. You don't find it in the Bible, which is basically a consortium of ancient scripture. You don't find it in the Torah. You don't find it in the book of the dead, the book of coming forth by day. You don't find it in no shit where we came from no apes. Yet all of a sudden, we got the Afrocentric scholars bandwidth to this bull jive. Even Charles Finch
Correct. Yes.
did his 2 books on us coming up from apes. And yet I'm telling you, I'm just as much scholar as any of these niggas out here, and I don't find this shit. But as a result, I bring you the information on how that's all a lie. That they still do when you see them people up in there, like you showed me the video of these crackers now trying to say that the Chinese came from white people. And I'll show you some because of the wool and the clothes they had on. Now you know damn well I got clothes right now 10 years ago that's dry rotted. Walk down the street, shit tear up on you. Dry rotted. In my lifetime. And yet you're going to tell me that they're going to get some fully closed crackers out of some snow and the clothes ain't dry rotted?
No, they said that they came out of the dry climate of the desert of China.
I don't care.
And that the
I'm in dry California.
The salt preserved.
See, I tell anybody a lie. I'm in dry South Carolina. I'm in dry Georgia. Hell, Atlanta ain't got no beaches. And clothes dry rot. You done had some clothes that dry rot. Now how the hell you gonna have some clothes that dry rot and you ain't 100 years old? And yet they got people stuff 1,000 years and we supposed to believe that. But because the cracker right policy on the standing on what you supposed to believe, you just supposed to believe him and don't even question this bull. And yet he's proven to be a liar. That's his whole civilization is based on a lie. That's what they just said here. The first great secret is that history is conceived for the majority of humans is incorrect. It's a lie. You see what I'm saying? So Darwin puts this thing about the ape thing up there. Number one, it's the best thing to do if you can put it all down that we came from apes. Then that can cover up the history of the doggone black man and how we came about. Because people still ask this question, if black people are the origins of civilization, then where the hell did white people come from?
Correct. That's what I want you to get into.
We'll get into it in a few minutes. But the key is, I want to just dwell on this. Thing. Now, some people say, well, no, Bobby, we got pictures of different types of ape species. I'm not denying that there's different pictures of ape species. I'm just telling you that they might have 100,000 different lengths of ape. I'm telling you that ain't got nothing to do with our history. They got different lion species. They got different dog species. But that don't have nothing to do with my human species. That's what I'm trying to say. So yeah, you can have all them bones, but that ain't got nothing to do with my history. See where I'm coming from? So this is how the white boy can confuse things. Now getting back to this particular science, majority of the information that I have uncovered based on our ancient science. See, first of all, this is the way I feel. I can't go by the white man's science.
Correct.
Because I know he's a damn liar, and ultimately, you see what I'm saying? I can't depend on him. So that means that if I'm going to do a record on finding the origin of the white man, I'm going to have to go by what we said. Now, like I said, if an ape could talk, why the hell we don't see no apes in the damn zoo now going, hey, I just learned how to talk. If an ape learned how to talk, seemed to me, in the history of just the last 700 years, we'd have seen some apes talk. Oh, that's some kind of ape that learned how to talk, and the rest of the apes didn't learn how to talk yet. Other bull about us mutating in some ice age. First of all, in order to say we mutated in the ice, it would have to bear witness that we were some type of stupid ape-like people. That if the ice age came, that we wasn't civilized to go, here come the ice. Well, I guess we'll just have to stay here and turn white. Hell, if that ice come, you know how to just... Hell, a retarded person know when it's snow outside to get out of the damn snow.
But they got trapped.
Well, that's what they say, they got trapped. But my point is if you're an advanced civilization like Egyptians, you will know when the ice come to a point that you don't have to get trapped. See, then my point is that certain things just don't add up. You see, because you got to understand something. See, when we still deal with that, because the Eskimos been up in them ice and they lighter than the damn black man was, and you don't see him turning white, ending up looking like Richard Cunningham. And he been up in the damn ice, and he's lighter than you. And you ain't seen him turning looking like Richard Cunningham. How is a blue black man, black as this here, gonna turn to be white? See what I'm saying? Seem to me an ice age, when it comes, it's gradual. It just don't come one night and you trapped in the ice. Seem to me they know that the climate is changing, and if these people are advanced Egyptians, that they would know how to travel out. See, to say that these people were not advanced people on the planet is to say that we were some type of semi-barbaristic cave people. That we didn't have enough sense to migrate. If we had damn detailed files, you see what I'm saying? We had enough sense to get out of the ice. Certain shit don't hold up. But see, then again, on the other hand, that's a theory. You see, you got to realize the whole two-crater theory and Diop stuff and all that stuff, that's a theory of when they try to explain what you call it, even Charles Finch dealt with. That's a theory. Now, in knowledge, you have a theory until you have anthropological, archaeological evidence. We don't have no anthropological or no archaeological evidence of us turning white based on trapped in no ice. So I got to go by the only anthropological and archaeological evidence we do have. One is at the temple of Seti I, where they talk about the 4 races of men, the Ruti, the Suti, the Hemu, and the Tamahu. The Ruti, which is the East African, the Suti, which is the West African, the Hemu, which is a Semitic type person, which would be my color. Not no Jew that was converted into thing in Spain. The Semitic type person, and then you have what is called the Tamahu. Tama meaning created, and Hu meaning white, light, and bright.
Wait a minute, don't say that though, do it?
It does say this. Verbatim. Jeremiah, Book of the Beginnings, Volume 1, page 27.
Let's just go over that one more time, set the record straight. There are 4 races of people.
It says at the temple or the tomb of Seti I, which is in Abydos, First Holy Land. There are 4 races of men. The Ruti, West African, Ruti, East African, the Suti, West African, which is your most ancient race of men. The Hemu, which is a Semitic type person, which would look like me. And the Tamahu. Tama meaning created, and Hu meaning white, light, and ivory. Or the Tamahu thus, it says the next caption, the created white people. It goes on and say that the Ruti and the Suti was issued out of the eye of Amun-Ra, because the eye of Amun-Ra, the eye of Set, or the eye of Heru is still melanin. And they were the original people. But on the same text, on the same wall, it says, but the Ruti and the Suti created the Hemu and the Tamahu. Now that's the temple walls. Now who I'm going to believe? I'm going to believe some cracker, or I'm going to believe some Diop who was married to a white person who later on got killed. That's what we got to sit straight to. They killed Diop. Killed him on the plane on the way coming back. We'll get into that. I'm going to believe the white man, I'm going to believe the Egyptians. We can't say the Egyptians are the greatest scientists of all, and I ain't going to believe what they say. But there's more. There's tons more.
Let's talk about it.
Okay? In your Nag Hammadi library, dug up in 1945, it goes on to say that there were some counterfeit spirits that was created. Counterfeit spirits that was created. And they've been holding the original true spirits down even to this date. Says that in the Gospel of the Apocryphon of John in the Nag Hammadi Library. It goes on in the Nag Hammadi Library and says that the people on earth are separated by two essence. By a single essence. The counterfeit spirits and the original people are separated by two essence, and that essence, by one single essence. If you study alchemy, the word essence also goes back to melanin. Also says in the Nag Hammadi Library that you got the original spirits of the original beings who have the original true blueprint of the universe. And then you have the counterfeit spirits who have a mock nuclei with one ring of consciousness.
Repeat that, please.
A mock nuclei with one ring of consciousness. Anytime you get the word mock, it means it is something other than the original. It is a copy of the original. And one ring of consciousness. In the Hermetic text, which is some of the oldest texts on the planet, and it says, our problems as Egyptians or man's problem is man learn how to create another man. Now you got it in black and white, Hermetica, 1935, Walter Scott. 1935, Walter Scott.
Says, man, the problem
Well, the problem with man is man learned how to create another man, mainly the Egyptians.
And what was it, why did he come about to say that? Why did he come about?
He didn't come about to say that. That's what the Egyptians said. He just translated the text.
The Egyptians said this in relationship to the problems that had befallen them.
Right.
Where do they say this at? Where can I find this information?
The Hermetic text is basically these texts that was in the Library of Alexandria that was wrestled out and translated into Greek and into Latin. Well, I get you on another thing. I don't even believe the Greeks translated all that stuff into Greek and Latin. Or they wouldn't be able to understand it to even translate it. I think the Egyptian priests, knowing prophecy, translated these texts for them. You see what I'm saying? I believe that half the stuff that was translated was not translated by people that didn't know what they was dealing with. I think that the stuff was translated for them. As a matter of fact, when we first went off the, when my mate Ginger, when we first got off the Indian mound, she was getting all the psychic channels. The spirit realm told us white people ain't never even initiated in no mystery system. So I got two conclusions. Maybe the people that initiated it was Greek, was black. Which goes with your boys thing that they Plato and the Socrates is some made up shit. But they never initiated in no mystery system. Because the first thing I asked them, why the hell y'all niggas put some damn white people in the mystery system? And the spirit said, ain't no white people ever initiated in no mystery system. That's what they said. Makes sense. If they do prophecy. You see? There was black Greeks. Black Romans. And I saw some Greeks in 1995 with nappy hair. And I said, now if these people had nappy hair in 1995, how the hell did they look 2,000, 3,000 years ago? If they got nappy hair in 1995, I know niggas ain't got nappy hair now. Depends on who's writing your history for you.
Correct.
So the Hermetic text says that. The Semitic text also says there are people with souls and there's people without souls.
And the people without the souls are the people?
The Europeans. In the Nag Hammadi Library, in the stuff called the tripartite tractate, which is some book, in these things they say. They go in and say that you got two kind of people. You got one person who is a spiritual being that has a soul. It goes on to say you got another person that's a physical being that has a spirit but does not have a soul. And there's something different between a spirit and a soul. Hell, a dog got a spirit. A roach got a spirit. A spirit is just something that animates you, that emanates in you and animates you to move about. White man say, you cut me and I bleed. I cut you and you bleed. Well, hell, a damn hog bleed. That ain't saying nothing. A hog got a spirit. There's something different between a spirit and a soul.
Well, but the mating, you can mate with a white person and have a child.
Yeah, that's because the energy of that black person carries the soul.
Explain that, Bob, in terms of that mating situation. And what is the baby?
Baby's black. That person has a soul. That melanin is nothing but the soul. First of all, let's get this dumb shit right. All the niggas out here thinking these crackers is on the same equal. If you don't have no melanin, you don't have no soul. The soul itself creates melanin as a form of shadow around it to protect that seed of God. That's alchemy. That's the royal art of ancient Kemet. You can't have a soul and not have melanin. Even you got white people, maybe 2% of white people that's got a soul. That's because they ain't white. They just some black people that's light on the outside based on some gene mixing. But that melanin itself carries the soul.
So in the final analysis, not bothering you, can go into the
Yeah.
moors or wherever you want to go.
No, we won't.
You're saying that white people are created by whom?
By us. If we were advanced scientists, if the white boy got gene splicing now, which you're going to get on in.
And he does.
Hell, if he got gene splicing now, what you think we had? See, the problem is, a part of our slave conditioning is to always think that people outside of white society is still kind of stupid. Even when we look at Kemet or Egypt, with the greatness we think it is, we still don't think that the Egyptian society was advanced as the Europeans' technology now.
Correct. That is true. That's the problem.
That's the problem. Even Amos Wilson said that's the problem with you. The reason why you think that the white man is so great is because you think that he is synonymous to technology. You see what I'm saying? And even we can't get that. So when we look at things like that, we see the white boy can damn cross-make animals, fruits, humans, hybrid, all types of experiments that they can do. And yet we don't have a problem saying, no problem, they can do that.
Correct.
You hardly don't need anybody to go, yeah, they can do that. But that's the white man. But you don't think that these people who are only operating on a byproduct of what we had, they don't even have the ultimate information on what we had, and we couldn't do it? That's insanity. You're going to say this white man has got half the shit that we got. You see what I'm saying? Can do what he does. And yet we had the whole of it. And we couldn't do that. See, this is a form of the same slave mentality that we always fail by. You see what I'm saying? So we couldn't create a white man. You see what I'm saying? When the white man can create a white man now, in a short period of time.
Clone shit.
He been cloning since 1945. Humans. We'll get into that when we go into this, because that's a part of this whole clan thing. You see what I'm saying? But if I went on, I can spend the whole next 2 hours giving you documents on this white boy being created. You see what I'm saying? Being created. Every culture got some of this. I wrote a book, The Human Artificials, in 1994. Since then, I got to go and update the book because it's just that much information came. So we got archaeological, anthropological evidence, tons of it, of this white boy being created. You see? We even have a stuff called Abduction Extraordinaire created from the Chesterbaity papyruses out of the British Museum. And the Chesterbaity papyrus of the British Museum talks about above Egypt abnormal people. Below Egypt normal people. It was talking about the Europeans. You see, so we got tons and tons of that type of information. And we can back that up. Let's put it this way. We got more documents than the so-called Negro scholars got theory. Because that's still only a theory. A theory is only based on a theory until you find some fucking evidence to suggest that your theory is right. And they don't have none. Yet I got all of the stuff that the Egyptians say, the Mesopotamians say, and even the Greeks say, talk about there's created people on this thing. And do you know that the Hermetic text is what Western academia is based on? So how the hell are you going to tell me that the damn byproduct of Western that is Western academia can be right and the source, which is the same Hermetic text, can be false? So the evidence saying, see the problem here, it's very interesting because this is some stuff that's being redeemed. This same stuff I'm telling you, Elijah Muhammad told us 60 years ago. But because he didn't have an education, and we so degree conscious now, we couldn't believe what a man without an education would say. And a man with a 4th grade education say that means that's divine. Do you know that the United States government gave this man a motorcade, a congressional parade down Washington, D.C. in 1950 something? Do you know that in 1971, Columbia Pictures put out a movie on the life of Elijah Muhammad? And they picked the top black actor and wouldn't take nothing but the top black actor of that time to play him, Sidney Poitier. Played Elijah Muhammad in a movie called Brother John. Get that movie, Brother John, 1971, Columbia Pictures. Brother John. Get that movie. So my point is, we couldn't bear witness to the stuff he said because he didn't have an education. And to this day, everything got fit in this little white man's education, and we miss out on all this stuff. Because all the white man education can say is, that's not the way education is done. Well, since when in hell we get this damn beast the authority to tell us what's educated or not? And so whenever we exclude our own science, which a lot of times is rooted in spiritual things, that means that we're saying that the white man is superior. So when niggas say, I can't get with that spooky stuff you saying, because it don't come by the way of the white man's authority. That means that you are saying that ultimately the white man is the ultimate in reality, and what goes on in reality. Get where I'm coming from here? You see, so we got more than enough evidence on that particular science. Now, in so many words, the Moors understood prophecy, or the Egyptians, and they knew that they had to fulfill this prophecy by going in to educate the Europeans. This was a mixture of several priesthoods coming together under the banner of Islam. And went up into Europe and set up 16 universities to educate the Europeans. In these 16 universities, just as you go to college now, will initiate into a fraternity, They initiated into fraternities too that the Moors set up for them, and those fraternities were your first modern Masonic groups. Your York Rite, your Scottish Rite, your Knights Templars, your Grotto Rites, your Cathars, which is a group, and all of these particular secret societies, as they learned the science that they learned. A group of Europeans decided to do an alternative thing based on religion and all of that, was inducted into Judaism. And that becomes the origin of your Hebrew Jews who ain't got nothing to do, your white Jews who have nothing to do with the original Hebrews whatsoever. And they was conducted into a secret society of Kabbalah, which is the same stuff that your Lubavitcher Jews or your Hasidic Jews practice today. The Kabbalah. Get the movie A Stranger Among Us and listen to it. Oops. You want to cut that off for a minute?
I'll give it.
So these secret societies were set up under the Moors as an alternative institution within those 16 universities. They set these secret societies up. Your newly converted white Jews converted into Judaism had nothing to do with the real Hebrews, which were black. In your book, The 13th Tribe by Arthur Koestler, talks about that, the converting of those white Jews. They were initiated into Kabbalistic systems, Kabbalah. And your Hasidic Jews and all practice that today. I said you get the movie, if you get that particular movie, A Stranger Among Us with Melanie Griffith, they talk about that in the movie. Griffin or whatever her name is. Anyway, these particular secret societies came up based on that. The Rosicrucians, who later on became the custodians of a lot of this particular information, including an ancient word for Christ that they cut off. You get the word Christ, there's an ancient word for Christ called chrysomelos. And chrysomelos, the word melos is Greek for black and apple. Because you know apple got melanin in it if you cut it in half. And God said you could eat from all the trees except the one of the tree of knowledge. And they bit in the apple, that's melanin, tapping into the third eye. They tapped into the third eye and what? They saw. But there is a God, there is a name of Christ called chrysomelos. So the white boy got enough power, he said, well, I'm gonna make a word extinct. So they just take it out of the whole language. The Rosicrucians still use it. It's called chrysomelos, which means black Christ. So I'm saying that the word Christ originally was called chrysomelos. That's in the Rosicrucian aspect. So the ancient Rosicrucian order, all as Moorish institutions. And they set up those particular things in those particular societies. So what are some of the sciences that basically the Moors brought? Well, we know of all the learning and all the stuff that the Afrocentric movement told you, all of the stuff that the Moors brought. Well, let's get into some of the esoteric traditions. Basically, when you go in those New Age stores and all that stuff that they got, the New Age stores is dealing with, it's nothing but all of the stuff that they basically conserved from the Moorish science of all of the stuff that the secret societies had. And when you see all that stuff, they give it a new name. Esoteric teachings, New Age, and all that stuff. All that is nothing but Moorish science that they basically became the custodians of. Right. And now trying to fake as being white in these so-called New Age bookstores or what they call occult bookstores. You see what I'm saying? That's all that stuff is. Just put a new name on it. And you thinking it's some white people shit. So your tarot cards, you see them, this fortune telling, the tarot. That was introduced by the Moors. From the tarot cards, you get the playing cards, introduced by the Moors. You see what I'm saying? All your divination system, they got little stuff they throw down, little stones called runes. Introduced by the Moors. The crystal ball. This is real deal stuff that works. Divination, introduced by the Moors. Your incense, frankincense and myrrh, all that introduced by the Moors. Gunpowder. You thought it was China. It got its root in alchemy. It has its roots in alchemy going back to Hemmitt of the study of metals in and out the body. Also introduced into Europe by the Moors, as well as your fire stick, which later on was the gun that they didn't have no use for. Introduced by Moors. Spiritual music. The word music comes from the word muse.
What do you mean they didn't have any use for the fire stick?
Well, based on their nature. You know, they didn't conceive of this thing as being a weapon or something they want to kill people with. I guess they figured, you know, white boy picked it up after them and used it. All we know is they invented the gun, the fire stick, and didn't use it. You see, and didn't use it. Music, classical music that we thought was a white, that's the Moors. Brought that up because the scales was invented in Egypt. It comes out of Hermetic science and ultimately out of alchemy. It is melanin put to scale.
You're talking about music,
yes.
Musical scale.
The word muse is a Greek word for components inside of the melanin. These angelic beings called muse. You get the word music. Something that inspires you. Melanin inspires you. This is all coming from the Hermetic teachings or the teachings of Tahuti. Because Hermes is Tahuti in Egypt, which is the teachings of alchemy, which is the study of melanin. The dark night of the soul. And so music, which is the components of what's heard in the body put to scale, is introduced into Europe by the Moors, classical music. They call Beethoven the Moor of Russia. You see. Some stuff called the greater key of Solomon. And some stuff called the lesser key of Solomon. Which is these magical texts. Introduced into Europe by the Moors. One of the benefits of Moorish teaching was Nostradamus. His teacher was a Moor. There's a movie came out, Orion Pictures Nostradamus, 1994 is when it came out. It's called Nostradamus. And in there you'll see he'll go to this teacher, and this teacher gives him all of this stuff and literally cultivates his psychic ability. Although in the movie they show him as a white boy on an NBC TV special earlier that year, they showed it was a black Moor behind him. So anytime you see these pictures in Europe and you see the white boy standing and they have a black man behind him in basically Arab dress, the black man behind him was his teacher. When you go get the movie Rob Roy, and in that movie Rob Roy, you will see the king of England, or wherever this particular king of that time, or nobleman of that time, he got a little black boy behind him. You think the little black boy is a slave, but the little black boy, as a little boy, got on a turban. That's his teacher. He's a Moor. Robin Hood is traveling with what? A Moor. You see that in the movie Robin Hood with Kevin Costner, and Morgan Freeman plays the Moor. Morgan Freeman also plays the Moor again in the movie Maul Flanders. He plays the Moor. And he says how they were dealing with alchemy in the actual movie. It's always the Moor, and which is the teacher. So the Moors taught Nostradamus. He said, if you take this elixir, your psychic powers will get better. And he put his hand in it in the movie and said, ooh, that's nutmeg. And he said, among other things. Well, the Spirit gave us the other thing is nutmeg, honey, and some lemon. I know it's nutmeg and honey, cayenne pepper, boiled into tea and drink it, and your psychic powers will get better.
Ginger, y'all want to give us a little cup of nutmeg and honey at our next break?
So anyway, they just say nutmeg in the movie, but the movie Nostradamus, just remember the one from 1994, Orion Pictures. So Nostradamus, basically all of his ancient wisdom is brought to him by the Moors. And he mentions the Moors throughout his whole text. Especially you get the book, The Complete Prophecies of Nostradamus by Henry C. Roberts. And you'll see the Moors all through that particular text. As well as the word Mabus, which is also another name for the Moors. All of that is in the actual text. You see, all of that. As well as Nostradamus mentioning that in the 1990s black people will come into their own.
He says that?
It says that. He also says, near the end of the world, Saturn shall return. Yet late to its return, the empires will be changed to black nations. And it goes, say, Nearborn will have his eyes pecked out by a hawk. I'll break that down esoterically. And another thing it says, throughout all the U.S., all of the United States cannot save her by sea. I mean, you can't go and fight your wars overseas no more and be victorious. But between two rivers, and you see, he said I'll write everything in code, Atlantic and Pacific, she will fear a furious black hand will make America bend to her knee. A fearful, wrathful black one, it says, will make America bend to her knee. Right in the actual prophecies of Nostradamus prophecies.
Can you tell us which prophecy that is and where to find that?
It's all in the book, Henry C. Roberts' book, The Complete Prophecies of Nostradamus.
Okay. We'll move.
Yeah, Complete Prophecies of Nostradamus. All of his training was based on the Moors' training. Your coat of arms, your whole royal setup of all European countries is based on the Moors. And thousands of black people that were still up in Russia up until World War II, where your boy, what's the guy from Russia? Stalin, supposed to kill 100 million Russians.
Black Russians.
How the hell he gonna kill 100 million people? If that's a number, how he gonna kill millions and millions of people? His own citizens, and they don't turn against him. They was doing ethnic cleansing and was killing leftover black Russians.
And they're doing that even now. There's still some doctrine.
Exactly. What happened was the Cathars, which was a Gnostic Moorish people that settled into, they settled France, they settled Ireland, and they went on up into Russia and on into Bosnia. And from 1991 to 96, they killed off that black element in Bosnia. Of the leftover Cathars. The Cathars of these Moors first also settled Ireland. So when they said it, what's his name, ran the snakes out of Ireland, he was running the snake people out of Ireland, St. Patrick's, the Moors. They settled Ireland. The river dance, you see that river dance they doing? The Irish people doing that river dance? That's black. You'll see African tribes will do a dance with their legs are moving and their bodies standing straight. Their torso straight. It's the same as the river dance. They found a cross a Celtic cross. Because they talk, see, you hear these white people talking about, see, if you go to the esoteric stores, you hear Celtic, we are the Celtic. Celtic is another damn name for Moors. That's just after the Moors trained these people, they became the Celtics. These were the early people who benefited from Moorish civilization. You see what I'm saying? So Celtic. St. Patrick's Day was put in and was also upheld by the Moors, by the Pope, in the Irish Catholicism to cover up the fact of the Moors that was there at that time. You see. In Scotland, your bagpipes, and those robes they wore, you know, your little kilt, what you call it? What's that called? Kilt?
It's called a kilt.
Kilt? That ain't nothing but the Egyptian robe, redone in the fabric of the land. The bagpipes and all of that. There's a cross, Celtic cross with the name on it, Bismillah, which means Allah. All of this brought up by the Moors. Your King Arthur's and the Round Table story. Your King Arthur and your Round Table story. Was first introduced into Spain. Into Spain. You want to stop and let him set up? Or?
Yeah, we'll stop and let him set up. Bobby, we're going to be ready to roll.
Okay. Also, the Moors also instituted your King Arthur and your Round Tables. This all came out of Ireland. Then when Britain took over Ireland, the Camelot became Britain. But before, when it was in Ireland, it was supposed to be a new city at the ends of the earth. We'll get into that, which is supposed to be America. It only became Britain after. Get your movie Excalibur to try to get Excalibur, 1981, to try to get a synopsis on the King Arthur's court and the Holy Grail thing. Get the movie Excalibur, 1981, to try to learn about what the King Arthur's court is. Your Grail is supposed to be this mystical cup that's supposed to bring magical healing as well as a form of the Christ energy. All of that stuff introduced into Europe by the Moors, mainly into Ireland by the Moors. So the Irish, the original Irish, which was a lot of black people, was also settled there by the Moors. You can get the movie Secrets of Rowan-ish. Secrets of Rowan-ish, and when they talk about the Black Seal, that's the Moors. That's the Moors also. They'll talk about a Black Seal. That's also the Moors. Your Hermetic text that I talked about was introduced into the, which is called the Corpus Hermeticus, which is basically the basis of European knowledge, which they sifted the Corpus Hermeticus and give you the byproduct of some other greater mysteries, is introduced by the Moors. Your Nookian magic, you'll see, it's supposed to be this magic that was supposed to be hooked up by a guy by the name of John Dees, which is supposed to be Queen Elizabeth's soothsayer or magician. And he's supposed to have gotten contacted by these Enochian entities and gave him this system of magic where in actuality he had full run of the British Museum, which became one of the main custodians of all this leftover stuff from the Moors. And by him having full reign, he just went in there and just translated text. Anytime you see some stuff in these metaphysical bookstores where they have these old ancient texts, like the Greater Key of Solomon, and they'll say, well, these texts just mysteriously showed up in Europe, that means that they were from the Moors. There's some stuff called The Magic of Abra Marilyn Mays, a book called The Magic of Abra Marilyn Mays. If you ever get into that little book on the magic of Abra Marilyn Mays, you will find all of the stuff that's in that book is Moorish science, numerology, astrology, astronomy, the Kabbalah, your Kabbalistic text, which is Jewish mysticism. The first books of the Kabbalah is the Zohar, Sefer Yetzirah, Sefer Beher. These particular books came out of Moorish Spain. The first book came out of Spain. Mm-hmm. Well, how did it get in Spain? They talk about the Spanish Jews. Mm-hmm. Good book on this Moorish science and stuff, a book called People of the Secret, by Ernest Scott. In that book he'll talk about the Sufis. He won't say the Moors, but he'll also say the Sufis in Spain. He's a master of the English language. You will see it up in there. But he also goes in the book and says Sufi, Suf, means woolly-haired one. But Camelot, the word Camelot, comes from the word Cam, Egypt, Lot. It means the new state of Egypt, which would also be America. Get all that into, also you can find out about America being broken down and being the new state of Kemet, Washington, D.C., and all the other cities in America bear witness to that on the Masonic architecture. Manly P. Hall wrote a book, The Secret Destiny of America. There's a new book called The Return of the Ancient Serpent of Wisdom, which is literally the Kundalini energy, but at the end of the book he talks about the new destiny where this ancient serpent of wisdom is supposed to end up in this America, which is talking about black people. Which is talking about black people. All of these texts, the Book of Enoch, the Ethiopian Book of Enoch, brought to Europe by the Moors, which predates the Old Testament and was not put in the Old Testament because it's coming from Ethiopia. The Slavic Book of Enoch. How do Slavs get a Book of Enoch? Because all that's Moorish science. You see. Turkey was a Moorish providence. Then all of a sudden Turkey get hit with the damn earthquake. But then again, we all know that based on the Hart Project, and the white boy got the actual, the type of science to create earthquakes, hurricanes and storms, tornadoes and all that. You see. All of that coming from ancient Moorish science. Your Jews, your white Jews, introduced into Moors or converted into Judaism by the Moors, given the Torah and given the other higher text, which is your Kabbalah. All that's Moorish science. The Kabbalah comes from the temple of Komombo in Egypt, where they got the Pharaoh holding up the same tree of life that the Jews say that is supposed to be Jewish mysticism. On the temple wall, they got him holding up that same tree of life at the temple of Komombo in Egypt. Right. Also, too. The plan of the Moors was to civilize a semi-barbaric people, or make a people that's halfway civilized, so we can be the benefit of this particular information once we come and get set up in America, which is also prophesied in the Greek story, Jason and the Argonauts, which this story, the guy Apollonius was the curator or the director of the Library of Alexandria. Then all of a sudden this story, Jason of the Argonaut, where he take the best of the Africans, put them in a boat to sail to the ends of the earth at a land called Caucasus to get the golden fleece, which is a lamb's wool in Christ with the lamb's wool, a woolen fleece. It's called the woolen fleece or the golden fleece, and when you translate all that, it means melanin. And it also means the Christ. So shall the sun, as the sun rises in the east, so shall the Son of Man rise in the west, which is the Christ. The Son of Man is the Son in man. the hidden sun or the black sun, which is the manifestation or the crystallization of melanin in a people in the West. The Hermetic text, which is the prophetic text, that is assigned to Asclepius. And Asclepius, as you know, is the god Tahuti. No, excuse me. Asclepius is the god and the physician Imhotep. And Imhotep, as you know, is Asclepius, who the Greeks prayed to at the Hippocratic oath as Asclepius. In the Hermetic text, they got a whole sermon, the perfect sermon of Asclepius. And in there is the prophecy of how he was going to go into slavery. How Egypt, which is the temple of all the gods, would become one big graveyard. And how the pious man, which is righteous man, would be looked on as impious. And how the impious man, which is the wicked man, will be considered pious, righteous. And how the weak man will be considered strong, and the strong man will be considered weak. And how everybody would look up to the wicked man will be considered noble. And how the righteous and pious man would be treated like a common criminal. And all of these people in this faraway land will look like Egyptians. They will have the mind of another race.
Now, that's all in prophecy.
That's all in the prophecy. Imhotep starts crying. He said, will we ever get up out of this? And Tahuti, who is the person that Imhotep is divining to, giving him this spiritual knowledge, say, yeah, Maya will be established. He said, where? He said, there will be a land that's not established yet, that all nations will speed towards in all types of transportation to get there. And in that land, there will be an extremities or an appendage or an annex of Egyptians that will be in that land. And they will establish Maya.
Now, Bobby, just for clarification, the text that this prophecy in again, the text
I'll give you
in,
3 versions of it.
Okay.
One, same perfect sermon of Asclepius in Walter Scott's book, Hermetica.
Okay.
The other book, which might be hard to get, but it's by Shambhala Press, but you still probably can get it. 1992, it came out again, from the 1930s. The other one, new book, is by Copenhagen, another Hermetica, which has the perfect sermon of Asclepius in it, which you can get. The other book is 3 volumes, Thrice Great Hermes, 1907 by G.R.S. Mead, which has the perfect sermon in it. Another version, which might be out of print. No, you can get it from Kessinger's Press now. So it's in print. The Kessinger out of print book company, you can get it. Another one is Anna Kingsford and Maitland's book, The Virgin of the World. It's also in there. But the one that you can more readily get is the Nag Hammadi Library, which was dug up in 1945 because a portion of the Corpus Hermeticus is in the back of the book, and that perfect sermon of Asclepius is in the back of the Nag Hammadi Library, translated by James Robinson.
Now, the original text was an Egyptian text that came. Give me the original source.
The original one, we don't have the hieroglyphic version because the Library of Alexandria was burnt.
Okay.
But we do have the translated version in the Greek and Latin that was translated out of the Library of Alexandria, and that's the text I'm telling you about, the Hermetic text.
All right.
So there's more than enough stuff. The ones that you can get right offhand, you might have to order the Copenhagen's book, which is the Hermetic text, which is probably the latest retranslation of the modern stuff. But also you can get the Nag Hammadi library, which is all these original sayings of Jesus, or the Christ, let's put it that way, that's in. But a part of that Nag Hammadi library is that same Hermetic text. Is in there. He said, Ma'at will be established. But if you go back and get, I told you there was a guy by the name of Theodore P. Ford, wrote a book called God Wills the Negro. And he explained how when the Arabs, the last invasion of Egypt, or Kemet, when the Arabs invaded,